very proud to be able to introduce two people I have met before, Michael Tressler and Tony. They are allowed to be in the same room by judge's orders now, so everything's okay. They're going to talk to you about how to...
You must maintain a 5-meter distance.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
Yes. They're going to talk about how to put Teams on Windows XP today. That's what we're
going
to...
Whoa.
It's not supported, and by the way, this is based off work that Tony did on his Windows 2000.
Yes.
I was going for NT. You didn't...
Yep.
I've missed the brief.
I was happy. Last year's session was going to be on Windows Me, so...
It's always about you, isn't it, Eric?
Eric, there's the door. You had to swear.
I do. Here we go with this session. I hope everybody enjoys it. Actually, about Teams Android devices. Have a good one.
Cool. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2. Michael and I are going to spend some time throwing food at you. That's the first thing. You'll see that as we go through. That's why we've called this the free snacks edition. We're going to be talking about managing Teams Android devices. This is it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour in the 35 minutes, but we have some links to give you at the very end. So let me introduce myself. So I'm Tony Woodruff. I'm a senior program manager in Teams Engineering. So my role is very much regionalized. So I'm based here in the UK, but I work with a lot of our enterprise customers. I gather feedback from all the folks like you, take that back to engineering, and then we obviously iterate the product or write documentation. And generally, I get the lucky job of coming to see all of you while my colleagues you met yesterday were ultimately remote. I'm now going to hand over to the snack master himself, Mr. Tressler.
Hey, everyone. So that's fun size, because we had the M&M's fun size. We also have, we're running low, Flaming Hot Cheetos. Anyone for Flaming Hot Cheetos? Here we go. And so there will be more as we go on. I'm a senior customer engineer based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. I am COVID-free as of, I hope, today, so I can get back home. And my job is to write training on Teams devices. So I started on Teams Rooms Windows last year and Teams Android devices this year. You have the clicky thing? Here we go.
Yeah, go for it.
That's working. So objectives. I don't care about objectives. So we don't have a lot of time. So Tony and I worked on this pretty much the whole year, and so this is the first time we're presenting this stuff publicly. We have released the PowerPoints or the PDFs of all this, but we have never talked about what those PDFs actually mean. So managing Teams Admin Center, managing Teams devices, there's 3 major touch points: Teams Admin Center, Azure Active Directory Portal, and Endpoint Manager, Intune. I will talk about the first one, and because Tony's smarter, he gets to talk about the next 2. So what is Teams Admin Center? Teams Admin Center is your one place to rule them all as far as Teams is concerned. And inside there, we have a beautiful little area called Devices. And we can see phones and rooms and collaboration bars. And as other than Teams rooms, these are all Android-based things. So they get sorted and put into the places where you want them to be. You're limited to managing Teams devices, so don't bring your Skype devices or SIP phones that are coming. Those are not going to be in Teams Admin Center as best I know. You cannot limit to a specific device type. So what you can do, I guess I should read the slide what I'm talking about, but there is a specific role called Teams Devices Administrator, which you can assign to people. So in my world, I'm just the global tenant admin of my test tenant, so I don't have to worry about this. But I did do training to a customer on Teams Rooms, and we get to like day 2 and kind of into this management section, and he had never seen Teams Admin Center. I'm like, how are you managing your 50 Teams Rooms devices without having seen Teams Admin Center? He did not know that there's RBAC, that there's a role specific to this. So this is the role. When he got it, he saw exactly this. So my slide matched what he saw, and that's it. You only see the Teams devices. Now you can't limit it to, oh, I want him or her to be a Teams display expert or him or her to be a Teams Rooms expert. You're an all devices expert. We don't have that kind of granularity. It gives you just about everything you need to know, except for they cannot see any of the calls. So PII, EUII, all that kind of stuff reasons. There are additional roles you can assign for kind of troubleshooting calls, but they can manage all of the devices. Within Teams Admin Center, here we're looking at phones. So all phones, user phones, whatever. You can see how many phones you have, any of them that need help, any of them that are healthy or unhealthy, things like that. One thing to note here on phones, I want to point out here, is we've got these 4 or 5 different categories, right? There's all phones, which is every single phone in your environment, and then user phones, common area phones, conference phones. how does a phone end up in one of those categories? Like how do we on Teams Admin Center side know that this is a user phone because it's just the same telephone? How do we know it goes what? And that is based off the license assigned to the user signing into that phone. So if I have an E1 or E3 or E5 license, I get put into user phones. If I have a common area phone license assigned, I go to common area phones. And if I have a meeting room standard or premium license, I end up in conference phones. There are ways to overwrite that by changing the user mode, and go to docs.microsoft.com and find the article, search Bing for user mode Android Teams phones, and that'll get it too. This is the one I want to spend the most time on today, is tags. I hear a lot from customers that say, you can't organize your devices in Teams Admin Center. And to an extent, that's true, because you get an entire solid list, just alphabetized list of 50 or 1,000 phones. I think what customers want is File Explorer. So you have a root, our company, Americas, EMEA, Asia, America, Florida, Central Florida, Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, South St. Petersburg, South St. Petersburg West, Building 1, Floor 3, Office 7, Phone 1. That's what you want. It's the way File Explorer works.
You got close to me again, by the way, and I got a bit nervous.
Sorry.
Just saying.
Barrister handy. He actually didn't move. He's supposed to, when I'm talking, he's supposed to move away from me.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Notice my English and the use of barrister.
I'm impressed.
So we don't have that. We don't have the File Explorer view. What we have is tags. And I remember when Gmail introduced tags, and that blew my mind then. And I never use tags in Gmail. I've gotten off Gmail. We shall be using Outlook anyway, right? But what tags do now, now that I've caught up mentally with what tags are, they let you do a limitless amount, I'm sure there's a limit somewhere, I don't know what it is, of tagging in any way, shape, or form you want. So here behind me, you can see some tags that are there, like North America. So I kind of like what I was talking about, North America, Florida, Tampa Bay, Avanti is the building, the apartment I lived in when I put the slide together, sales department. You can put free-form text. So yes, you can tag a device with geographic region, city, building, floor. You can tag all that. You can also tag things that you can't do very well easily. For example, warranty expiration. You can just do a field like warranty-2021-01. So January 2021, the warranty expires. Then just do a simple filter, which you can do in Teams Admin Center for warranty with that field and see which phones are expiring this year. Or if you're troubleshooting the phone, oh look, it's still under warranty because I can see the tag. So I can call Polly or Link or whoever and say, hey, the phone's broken, I need assistance. So tagging is the way it's done. That's why we don't do that. And again, I don't want to berate the point too much, but all freeform, whatever you want to do. And then within Teams Admin Center, you can filter and do what you want. All right, back to general Teams Admin Center. Here we can see, as you look down, I like to see this one because we can see there's a health status of non-urgent, which generally means that there's a firmware update that's needed. So the phone is perfectly fine. It's non-urgent. The phone's working fine. It's connected. We're not seeing any errors, but you may want to install a firmware update. So you can see a lot of good information on that when you drill into an individual device. As we drill in, we can take some actions here on the left. So download device logs, easily done. Some of the phones don't have a user interface. You can't web to it to get the logs. So this is the way to do that. Standardize on that. So again, if you have your Teams Devices Administrator, the other good thing is it's in a central location. So your Teams Devices Administrator can just go download those logs whenever they want to without having to get the user involved or travel. We can see quality, which is nice to see. So we've had one poor call, and then how many calls, how active is the phone. So if it's a common area phone or a meeting room phone, you can see, are people using this phone, or do we need to move that phone somewhere else or put something else in that room? When we drill in a little more, we can see that this does need a firmware update. So that's why we had the non-urgent health status in there. We can see details, so this is nice. There is some asset tagging things you can put in here, but it's really useful for serial number and not there. Is it in the previous one? No, it'd be in, maybe not, whatever. Anyway, so that's where you can get all the information. So when you do see this phone does need warranty, there is the information you need to call in and go. Updating Teams devices. So this is actually fairly complicated. So there are two ways to update Teams Admin Center. Update devices. You can use Teams Admin Center, and that's the way we at Microsoft recommend you do it, because you will get a guaranteed Microsoft certified firmware. It has been tested, it has been validated. This is one we trust to push out to millions of Android devices. From each vendor has their own update. Each vendor builds the update, gives it to us, we test it and push it down. There are times, however, when issues may crop up, and the vendor specifically has a firmware that is ready to go before it's been certified, or they're just not going to certify. They're like, oh, this is a quick fix. Let's get it out on the market, fix this problem. Then let's roll in the additional fixes we're going to do on our scheduled release cadence and give that one to Microsoft. So you can get into a situation where you are running uncertified firmware on your certified devices. Now you can, if you, the rule of thumb is pick one. Pick either the vendor utility to update the tools, or use Teams Admin Center. Either one is fine. Either one will update the tool. The advantage of Teams Admin Center, just to summarize, it is a certified firmware that you're going to get, and it's a multi vendor. So we can push firmwares to every vendor that is certified and shows up in Teams Admin Center. If you're using vendor-specific tools, you may need 3 or 4 tools if you have multiple vendors for specific reasons. So keep that in mind of how those update. Firmware updates. What is a firmware update? If we think through it, this is what I thought when I first started on these Android devices. It is a giant monolithic image like Windows that you push down and it's got everything in it. That's not the case. Keep in mind these are running Android, the Android operating system. So much like your phone, for the Android users in the room, there is an operating system provided by your phone manufacturer, Samsung, Google, whomever, OnePlus, whomever. And then there's a Play Store, right? And you download apps, and those are APKs. The Teams app on the phone is just an Android app. Therefore, it can be updated independently of the full operating system. So you'll see often, and we've seen this customers asking, it's saying an update, but only Teams app? Can I do that? Am I on the right firmware to update the Teams app? Well, you won't be offered the Teams app update if you're on a wrong firmware. We do keep that in step. So we, Microsoft, provide 3 Android apps on all of our Android devices. The one is the Teams app. That's the one you interact with, that makes the phone calls, runs the meeting, does all that. The admin agent, this is what talks to Teams Admin Center. This is what sends up the details, and if you make any changes, it's the one that receives the details and then does the updates. Company portal is Intune, so that is the Intune management agent. So that is what Microsoft provides. Our vendors provide their own app, if necessary. So they will have an APK, an Android application. So that is their management agent, so that's how they can push firmware. And the vendor also provides the operating system, but all of this taken together is firmware. So they consider firmware somewhere on the manufacturer side. The manufacturers, by the way, are responsible for the build of Android. We do not provide Android, ship it to them, and they install it on their devices. They build their own versions of Android.
And to jump in, the OEM app as well, when you go into the device settings, if you've got different vendors, you're going to see different menu items there, and that's their way of enabling you to control their hardware ultimately. So typically you'll see a lot of the apps that Michael's talking about the same across the piece from our side, but vendors do implementations differently.
All right, so we lob all of this together and put it in blob storage. Do version controlling, so to make sure does this team app work with this firmware, and also somewhere around here we validate the image to make sure there are no known issues that we can detect and they follow all of our requirements and standards. And then it shows up then ultimately in Teams Admin Center, and I know it's blurry and small to see, but it says one update available here. You tell the phone, you update, say, hey, there's an update available. The phone responds, give me the update, and they talk back and forth, the file gets copied. And then eventually, they respond that I'm on this new version and Teams Admin Center gets updated. So that is the kind of high-level gory details of what firmwares are and how we go about the update process. There are 2 ways to update your phones, manual and automatic. Automatic is the easy way. It's probably the way we all want to do it if we're IT pros and managing things. You set it for every Friday at 10 p.m. or whatever. Here's the updates. Let's go. Notice on this drawing, we do have firmware and a Teams app. So you could install the Teams app and not do the firmware. Now, firmware will often include the Teams app as well because it's the full bundle. So up to you to decide what kind of an update you want to do. If you do an automatic update, so if you say all these 1,000 phones, let's update them Friday evening or Saturday evening at 10 p.m. and then you go home and you pick the automatic update part, the firmware auto update, hand, arm, whatever, the firmware auto update part up here. I have to do it. There you go. That's the sexy hotness right there using this.
Yeah, it was 100%.
I didn't do it very sexy hot.
And you've said that twice now, and I'm still creeped out.
I told
yeah,
you I was
I'm
gonna
just
do
saying.
it.
Just saying.
I was trying to find a way
counting.
to work it in.
You did.
Nobody noticed.
No, I don't think they did.
So when you do an automatic update, let's say there's firmware 1, version 1, firmware version 2, and firmware version 3. And you're on firmware version 1 and an update comes out. It will not be offered to you as an automatic update, but it will be offered as a manual update, where you manually go update this one kind of now. When version 3 comes out, that will be offered as an automatic update. So auto updates always do N, I kind of do the N version, the most recent, or the most recent version -1, so N -1. So if you do automatic updates, you will never have the latest and greatest firmware. You'll have a well-known, baked-in version of the firmware. So it's kind of a way to do rings or whatever Windows does with their, whatever in Office, whatever those things are. So it's a way to kind of do rings. So you would put your entire staff, your entire everything on automatic update, and then just your IT phones you would put on this one. So if there's new UIs, if there's new things you need to do, you would then do that via manual, and you get the latest and greatest. I'm about there, Arnie.
Mm-hmm.
Your turn.
Go on. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the mechanics inside what the phone's effectively doing. So there's a number of different things that it's signing into and effectively having to satisfy before it can log in. So to start with, the first thing we have to do is we have to authenticate. And we, as you would expect, have to authenticate against our friend Azure Active Directory. And sometimes if we have some conditional access rules or we have some funky configs that somebody's putting around workplace join, we can hit some challenges. And I'll come on to some of those in a minute. When we, of course, do that authentication, we then, in most cases, have to talk to Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Why do we have to talk to Microsoft Endpoint Manager? Because the phones want to register with Intune. Okay? Now, we have two registrations that are effectively happening in this flow. We have that workplace join where it's registering with Azure Active Directory. And then we have that device registration where it goes, hey, Intune, I'm here. And the company portal app effectively negotiates, sends what model number it is, gives it all the device inventory information. And then we then step into the login, which is, of course, our friend Teams. And this diagram is really useful, and as I say, you'll see this in the slides. Just take this and put it somewhere in a wiki. Keep it, because it enables you to look at the flow and how all the different components are laid out end to end. So let's lay it out a bit more with the apps. So it's the company portal app that's actually doing the sign-in. Okay, if you've been in front of one of those Android devices, you'll see it flash up. Okay, some of those messages will be familiar to you if you've got an Android device, a normal phone. Okay, the UI is exactly the same. So the company portal app is authenticating. It's doing that login and role request to Endpoint Manager that I just spoke about, and then the workplace join goes afterwards. Once we signal from the company portal app that a sign-in has been successful, we tell Teams, hey, you can now sign in, and you can get a token using MSAL to log this device in. A couple of things that are really important. If you have turned off device administrator within Intune, which some people have, okay, because it's an older version of the Android management framework, you may get phones that just don't sign in, okay? And you have to be very granular and specific on how you're going to enable that device administrator profile, because that is a requirement today, okay? So let's look at some.
Can you go back one slide?
We can go for it.
I did just want to point out, note that we're using a token at this point to sign in.
Really important
so
security.
Android does not store usernames and passwords. It only takes it for the initial sign-in. Once you're successful, it's token-based. So unlike Teams Rooms Windows or Windows devices, the username and password is not stored on an Android device.
We will do questions at the end if that's okay. And if they're really good ones, you get prizes. So save them for us. So let's talk Azure Active Directory with conditional access. So some of this will be familiar to you. And I'm not going to go through the entire slide. But effectively, conditional access is there to be the gatekeeper for our resources in the cloud. I've worked with customers that didn't have conditional access, or it wasn't part of their licensing. And they said to me, okay, well, how do we secure the cloud? And ultimately, when I showed them this, because they'd never seen it before, they immediately recalculated their position. And I love this feature. And where I used to work, we would never have deployed in the cloud without it. All right. And it's obviously getting added all the time, but it enables us to be really granular on those sign-ins and approach them. So, for example, if I've got a phone on a desk, I may want to multi-factor that or that user account to sign in. And these are all the options that are there, and we'll go through them. So user risk. If you've got Microsoft Defender for Identity, you may want to evaluate user risk. The same with the sign-in risk side of things. And that's all part of that EMS suite, because there may be some abnormal behavior going on. The key thing with the Android devices, as you would expect, would be we have to target the Android platform, right? Because if we target Windows ME or Windows NT from those previous discussions we had with Eric, which I still haven't forgiven him for mentioning ME, but it's okay. It's okay. You're not going to get those CA rules fire, and it would be the same in Intune. Now, location is a really, really interesting one. I'm just going to do a quick straw poll. How many of you use location in your conditional access rules today? Yeah? How are you finding that with hybrid? Have you had to amend any rules?
Most of my customers will do MFA, not the location. So they just get MFA.
Correct answer. Yeah, absolutely. And the hybrid workplace is absolutely forcing people to reevaluate some of that posture, because everybody thinks that the devices are on our network, they're safe, but a lot of people actually want these devices at home. As Brian did yesterday when he asked earlier, what device do I get at home, right? And he loved that question, by the way. He loved it. So again, in the example that Brian's mentioned there, locations is really important, and you may want to use that as part of your rule set. So if we look at the controls, you may want to block sign in for whatever reason, but typically you want to grant and then enforce that MFA or our device to be marked as compliant. And what does compliant mean? The way I think of compliance policies in Endpoint Manager is it's like somebody there with a clipboard, ticking everything off and making sure you are meeting the rules. In conditional access with devices, the recommendation from us is balance security with user experience. Because that MFA is an extra few seconds for somebody to go, where's the SMS token? Has anybody got my Microsoft Authenticator app? I need to answer this phone call and press hash. These are all things that, while they're a disturbance to the user logging in and just getting stuff done, we as IT pros have to balance security, right? Because that person may not be who they say they are. Try and keep rules as simple as possible. I went to one customer that had over 100 different conditional access rules and more, and trying to get through the UI to work out which one was firing where before the what if tool, even to evaluate the rules, and there's a few people smiling in the room, right? That was a real problem. And the most important thing on this slide is Android devices don't support every condition. So let's go through some examples, and you can take some photos of these, and we will. These are actually published online, so you can get hold of these. But some people, may want to look at the different flows. So we have two flows. We have the user sign-in flow with some examples. Okay, so that's typically a normal user account like we've all got to access an interactive session. There are other types of account called shared accounts as well. So when you build your rule sets, think about what you're targeting. I mentioned about Android earlier. You can then build your grants to say, okay, I want to grant access in this example for all of these devices, and I want to use MFA. We may want to do Intune compliance, and I want that device to be marked as compliant. So we build it in Azure Active Directory, And then we have to build this compliance policy in Intune. Now, there's a rock star feature that was announced in the last 4 months. Michael will tell you I bored him to death about it for, was it 3-4 weeks?
It felt like 4 years.
I'm sorry. We did, let's not get emotional about that
No.
today. But this feature was serious because it enabled us now to target compliance policies to specific models of device. Okay? And it's brilliant because the big challenge was distinguishing between an Android device that we bought for, that could be a Surface Duo. I had to get that in there, but it could be, whatever brand you want. And as administrators, we could never separate them out, but we can with this. And all of those things there, the moment it's marked as compliant, hey, come on in, join the party, come and join Teams. But you can build more. So you could have a trusted location with compliance if you really want to be a bit more Fort Knox about things. And again, you can see how these examples build. It's very much a sweet shop of whatever you want to do, and you evaluate it against your individual organization's security posture. But shared devices, you have to think about something really, really important. Every time, when we deploy those shared devices, be it common area phones, be it NTRs, be it even displays as an example, although some people are using, they're more of a personal device right now. You have to think about these flows because MFA for a shared device, where's the message going to go? I worked with a customer that did it on over 150 different endpoints, and this one person was getting bombarded when they were installing them. And I went, hey, why are you doing that? Oh, well, because security told us to. Yeah, let's go and have a conversation. So these are all the things you need to consider, right? Because not every rule is the best way of doing things. And I'm going to go through these because I want to give you some time for questions as well. But just have a play. Remember, as I say, that not everything is supported by those Android devices right now from the conditional access rule set perspective. And there's a much more comprehensive presentation online where Michael hurt my feelings because he cut about 20 of my slides out.
I cut more of your slides than mine.
Yeah, that's just you being selfish.
That's what you get for asking me, like, hey, we need to cut this hour 20 presentation to 40 minutes, as opposed to you doing it.
Yeah, no, fair. That's fair. I will get you back.
But I got to do my section faster.
True. So let's just look at the complete picture, right? Our friend Endpoint Manager typically only supports those things in gray with Teams Android devices today. And it's more the compliance policy side than the configuration policy side. Because with Device Administrator, we're limited on what we can do, okay? I typically, when I'm talking to customers about this, say, hey, go and use a compliance policy. Because actually, there's a hidden thing. If you use a compliance policy and it's not compliant, it sometimes actually tries to be compliant by, for example, enforcing encryption, right? We are working tirelessly on this whole thing right now. I had a long conversation about it last night. So expect a lot of iteration, okay? And you'll see that when we announce all the stuff on the roadmap in the near future. So when we do device enrollment, as I say, it uses the device administrator profile to log in using that company portal client. Some of the challenges people have hit before is if you have an enrollment restriction that says somebody can only have a maximum of 5 devices, if you are like Ilya yesterday, where he's got hundreds of devices, right? You can get a problem whereby you hit this limit and go, no dice, what's going on? I can't log in. Somebody help me. And you're shouting over at somebody in Intune going, hey, what's going on? Oh yeah, we limit 5 only. Right? And as I say, if you're using hot desking, that number may need to be increased, okay? Enrollment restrictions are probably the main thing with this, okay? In terms of, you can use that to control whether you want device administrator available to a set audience, so you may want to target the shared accounts, or you may even want to put some serial numbers in, which we'll talk about at the bottom there. So you can import those serial numbers, and that effectively enables it to identify as a corporate device. And that, a customer of mine out in India is really, really pleased with, because they want to stop the eBay thing of somebody goes and buys a device, they plug it into the corporate network, and it's not on an inventory somewhere, right? We haven't got the serial number. They ring up and report a fault, and all of a sudden the company's swapping out a device that's actually personally owned, right? The other big one, before I skip on, I just did, is these devices do not run Google Play services. All right? Really important from an endpoint management perspective because we can only do certain things using GMS, right? That's what we call it, yeah. You could call it GPS, but then people get confused, right? But yeah, Google Play Services, if you're in Intune, you're trying to configure things, if that's not there, then it's not going to apply, it's just not going to work. So what's a compliance policy? For those of you that on the team side and may not know this. It defines a list of rules and settings a user must meet to be compliant and allowed to come in. It can include those actions that I was talking about just a minute ago, where it will take actions if someone isn't compliant. And typically, we can block people from signing in, yeah? You'll sometimes see when we're evaluating, it will say verifying a few things on the device. That's because we're hiding something in the background while the evaluation is happening, right? So just bear that in mind as well when you're going through that login process. So some best practices, yeah? Don't use things like Google Play Protect or device for endpoint rules because these devices don't run that right now, okay? We used to have a setting called ignore devices for unsupported settings enabled. We no longer recommend doing that because we have our friend device filters. We recommend those assignment filters now, or those device filters, because they're really, really cool. And they structure like this. So I can turn around and say, okay, my device model, I want to be, in this example, we chose a CCX 600, but it could be any one from our OEM vendors.
Or many of them.
Or, yeah, you can build multiples, yeah. And you can then use that assignment to go, okay, I just want you to evaluate this policy through the filter evaluation engine against just this model, okay? And this, as I said, this was the one I got so excited about, and Michael got so bored with me. And my wife got bored with me, and even my kids got bored with me.
When you called me that day, you couldn't speak because you're so happy.
But the problem is I started assigning model numbers to my children, right? And my wife got a bit upset and got a bit confused and then told me to go back to work. But this is just the most fantastic feature, even with anything you're doing with BYOD as well. Because you'll be able to target just those specific models. And with the Android space, this is transformational for us. But in this example here, from left to right, ultimately, all the models except the CCX 600 would be excluded from the policy, right? And this is also a really good security feature. Because if you turn around and go, I want those Android devices to sign in, but these are the only model numbers I support, if somebody goes and gets another device and signs in, they're never going to be compliant, which is perfect. The power's in our hands. Michael goes power crazy anyway on our shared tenants, and things get changed all the time. Random display names for me. I haven't forgiven you. But this is why this is really, really cool. So there's a couple of things that we want to really flag to you. Go to ak.ms/Teams Android Devices Training. There are a number of modules there you can go and have a look at. We will be posting videos where Michael will mention sexy hotness at least 12 times, and I'll be creeped out in the corner again. But we have a much more comprehensive set of training there, all right? Michael is Mr. MTRW. He's done some amazing training over there if you want to look at that space as well.
Yeah, I don't have a direct shortcut to the video I want to point out. I did a video, hour-long video, walking through everything we just talked about, or actually everything he talked about. With a guy named Mario de Ritter from Microsoft out of Belgium. And he's a Intune expert. So if a lot of this is like, well, how would I implement this? Find the video. It's the only hour-long one I have on my site. And we start with a completely empty Intune, my tenant completely empty with a phone. Actually, it's a Teams Rooms Android. And we go through building all of this, what Tony just did. So you can see step by step what happens. So hopefully today you get a kind of an understanding of what the purpose is. And then you can watch that video and see the actual machinations of how to do that. And then just for fun, I just threw this on. We didn't talk about this at all, but there is a free lab, an interactive guide. So as you're getting familiar with managing Android devices, you don't need a tenant, you don't need an Android device. Just go here and we'll step you through Teams Admin Center and those kind of management things.
And we know these, as typically, I was a Teams administrator before, and I was never an Intune expert, right? I know it's in some organizations it can be difficult to go, hey, Intune folks, I need this. Hey, AD folks, I need this, right? But this training that's there, you'll be able to just give that to them and go, Go and have a look, right? And as I say, we're going to continually be updating this, right? So as things iterate, as things change, you'll be able to go here, you'll be able to go and get the PDFs, go and look at the videos of the sexy hotness. See, I did get that in there just for you. And just continually learn about this because it's a huge area for us, right? It's a huge area, all right?
How much time do we have?
We have 2 minutes, 29 seconds left.
You have
I left
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
All right.
If anybody online in the Teams meeting would like to ask a question, raise your hand and I can enable your mic and you can come off of mute and ask the question. Otherwise, for the people in the room, we're going to throw things at you because that's what we do now. So here we go, the first person.
Question. You mentioned compliance policies. You can set it up in the Intune. How that works within the common area phone once this license is not provided
Correct.
within the Intune.
Correct. Yep. And the common area phone, as you say, you're absolutely right, won't register with Intune today, right? Because we do a license detection, right?
Okay.
To understand that login journey. Common area phones, you can buy an additional device license if you want it to be compliant, right?
Okay.
The Intune per device license. But common area phones is something that I get a lot of feedback on, right? And the product engineering team are aware around some of those feedbacks. If you have got something specific or a use case that you want to bring to me, we should talk after.
Awesome.
Because I'm keen to hear it, right?
Okay.
Because as I say, because that Intune SKU is effectively not in the Intune plan is not within the SKU.
Yeah.
Intune, when it tries to enroll, goes, yeah, sorry, you're not coming in.
And the last one, quick one. Android device administrator. You said now it's a requirement.
Correct.
Will be that in the future? Because I know that some of those firmwares worked even without the profile.
Yeah, we're still working on what we're going to do, right?
We
Because
would like to get rid of it. So.
No, absolutely. So there's some roadmap things that I can't talk about right now, okay?
Yeah.
But rest assured, feedback has been very clear, okay?
Thank you.
And yeah, cool.
So we have a question from online. Mark, if you'd like to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi there, great session, guys. And I think that Tony, just kind of answered the question or said, I was going to ask about the whole move from device administrator enrollment to enterprise administrator enrollment, but it sounds like that's a bit of a work in progress still.
And Mr. Lacini, I recognise that voice anyway. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are, as I say, we're taking feedback on that. The product engineering team in devices are looking at that. Unfortunately, I can't share anything right now. Okay, that's my favourite phrase because I keep you all wanting more. But yeah, I can't share anything right now. But the feedback has been 100% clear.
And that's
all
why,
right?
that's why I like not being invited to those meetings because I'm just ignorant. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm just like, I don't know. I think I've heard some things.
Teams licensing regarding to the MTRs, really standard versus premium. What's the Android flavor of us? Is there any advantageous reason why we would go to an MTR premium license if we have Android devices?
Today, no, because Teams Rooms Premium does not support Android. It's Teams Rooms Windows only. However, stay tuned. It's in tap right now.
What was it you said? You just didn't say that you have roadmaps and you're not really doing. You don't join those meetings.
Yeah, but I am aware of tap programs that happen. So it is in tap. So check back in, I don't know, later.
From the Teams Admin Center, can you push down basic policies to manage the devices like, you can change the default admin password, time zone and stuff like that?
Yeah, correct. And
Yeah, I skipped through that because due to time constraints, but there's things called configuration profiles.
Cool.
That you can assign you can create as many configuration profiles as you want. My kind of best use case is time zone, setting time zone on phones. So you could just have one for, being American, Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific, Hawaii, and then just push that to people and.
So you can do away with almost like the Yealink Cloud Manager. You can do away with that.
The one thing I do want to point out, since you mentioned Yealink and those things, we only control the Teams app. So if there are hardware features, you will need to use the vendor tool to manage and enable those things.
And we can, to Michael's point with the Teams Management Agent, we can change the password to, for example, the web-based GUI, right? But there are only certain things we can do. Yeah. One little tip I'm going to give you, especially around common area phones that the gentleman mentioned at the back, and you'll see this in our presentation when you think about security. Where you deploy devices, if you think a lot of those phones have actually got 2 NIC ports on the back, right? Switch one of them off. if it's in a shared location, because there's nothing stopping somebody coming up and plugging an Ethernet connection in, and they may get on your network if it's not secured with 802.1x, right? So just think about that when you're deploying these devices, because it's really important, because typically we just want to put them there and they just serve that function and purpose. Okay? How many?
We are pretty close to time. Maybe one more question, and then we'll close it out.
So device alerting and reporting. So I've got that set up on the MTR for Windows. One similar on sort of the Android handsets. Is that something potentially set up with a filter? So instead of having to go in manually, add each device to an alert, can I set a filter? And then when we've got more management people getting.
So you're talking about the TAC alerting feature,
TAC
right?
alerting feature, yes.
So we've that's not there today because we're effectively adding those accounts.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Cool. Good enough.
Okay, so thank you very much to Michael Tressler and Tony for such a great session.